Welcome to the Let's Talk with Paula show, where you know that we always have guests on here that are so fantastic and wonderful and people that everybody should know. I have a guest tonight that you don't know her from my show, but you know her from the Ed Brown show. And I want to tell you, if you did not know, that Ed Brown passed away, and they gave him a beautiful homecoming service at First Baptist of Glenarden. There were people, dignitaries that were there, you know, family, friends, you know, the studio showed up and showed out, and, you know, it was just like a good tribute that they gave to him. And they had they even had a video made that highlighted his life here in Maryland, you know, in PG County and Maryland, and all the people that he knew and people that he had on his show. And the lady that's here tonight, she was actually part of the heartbeat of his show. So she's here tonight because she has a wonderful story to tell, and I want to make sure that you don't forget who she is, because she is a miracle. She's a living miracle so far as I'm concerned, and I'm all about miracles. Even though this is Let's Talk with Paula, it's still about a miracle, okay? Because they do still happen every day. And I just want you to keep that family, the Brown family, up in prayer. I ask that you would keep this family, the young lady and her mother, up in prayer as well, because they, you know, really helped that show keep going. So now I want to talk to you about something else before I introduce my guest, keep you in suspense. You know, voting is coming up, and every show that I do, I don't care which show it is, that I'm telling you, this is a midterm election. The midterm election, this midterm election, which all of them were important, but we didn't show up and show out, okay? The millennials took it for granted. A lot of people took the election for granted for the President of the United States because they thought, oh, that man's not going to win, okay? But you see what's been going on. You see how things are being turned around. You see what just happened with a Supreme Court justice. So I'm asking you, you have an opportunity to vote. If you have not registered, I don't know when you will see this, but please look and see when it's your time that ends for you to register to vote. It is my understanding, though, even though they have a deadline, you can show up at the boothing polls and register there on site. But the deadline for each city to have it in by mail or whatever is coming up, and you need to check and see what it is in December in Virginia, what it is in DC, and what it is here in Maryland. Your count votes. You might not think that it votes, the vote counts, but it really does. You might not think that even if it's voting for the chief dog catcher in your area, that is not important, but it is. And just don't go on what has been. Well, I always vote for so-and-so and so-and-so. I always do this for so-and-so and so. Don't do that this year, because you need to do some investigation and look up for yourself to see whether or not that person that you voted in years ago, and see if they are voting on the things that you know that should be changed in this country. So it's not about ethnicity or age, but I'm asking every age group, every ethnicity to come out and vote, register, take a friend, call it take a friend to vote day, okay, whether they're young or old. But please, this midterm election, which is on November the 6th, here in this area, don't get it wrong, because I don't want you to miss it, because somebody's putting out a November the 7th date. You'd be too late, okay? It's November the 6th. It is a Tuesday, which is always a Tuesday, and Tuesday, November the 6th is the date for you to get out there and vote, okay? So do me a favor, you know, if you can't make it, you know, and you see that it's getting late in the day, call somebody that you know and say, please get me to the voting booth, you know, so I can vote before 8 o'clock at night, because they shut down. I saw a young man that was trying to vote in the last election, and he got at the door, stood out there in the parking lot for 5 minutes, and then when he decided to come to the door shut at 8 o'clock, and they would not allow him to get in, because those are the rules, folks. 8 o'clock, cut off. They cannot let you in. So please do what you have to do to make arrangements so that you can vote throughout the day. For those that work, go at lunchtime, you know. Go in the morning before you go to work. You know, as soon as you get off work, go. So I want the news to say that we have had the most people that they've ever seen to come out into a midterm election, so I can come back and say to you, we did it. So with that, I know you're going to do it. I'm going to let my guest introduce herself. And how are you feeling today?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm Kamaria T. Richmond, and I host a radio show, online radio show called the Stroke Diva Fabulous Radio Show. And so I am thankful that you have invited me on your show this evening to share my story.
And what makes it so bad is that we had talked about doing that, you know, many times while Ed was alive, and we just never got to it because y'all were running in, I was coming out. But, you know, I'm just glad that I had an opportunity to meet you and your mom, and to know that Ed, you know, thought of you guys dearly, that and that it's sad that he can't see this, but I know he's looking from somewhere above and he sees this happening. Right. And so I thank you and your mother for the opportunity to be able to have come into your space and to know you for who you are, and y'all are beautiful people, and I just want to say that. I just want to say that, okay? Now, you called the Stroke Diva. Okay, now tell them why. Then that's S-T-R-O-K-E, stroke?
Yes.
Okay, now explain to them what that means.
Well, I had a stroke at the age of 37, and it was 2004. And I had been sick a lot in 2004, starting in January. January, I was out traveling at work, and my primary care called, and she's like, you need to get here because you know, I've seen some stuff in your test results, and it was a thyroid. Then a couple months later, you know, my joints were hurting. I was having trouble breathing, and I had little, I don't want to call them lesions, they're called nodules, like around the eyes and the nose. And so went and saw, I have like a great team of doctors, and so I saw my rheumatologist, and my rheumatologist and my, oh my goodness, I can't think of the name right now.
It's okay.
Yeah, it may come to me
Shout
later.
out to you, you know who you are.
Right, my pulmonologist.
Okay.
And because I had the breathing and the joints, and I also saw my cosmetologist, and because of what was going on around the eye area. So they all did tests and tests and tests, and so they said, okay, well, we think you have tuberculosis. I said, okay. I'm shocked because then I can't work for a whole week. I have to wait for the health department.
The test, yes.
The health department has to come by.
Yeah.
So, okay, they know it's not that. So this, well, maybe it's lupus. And they did all the tests for that. Well, finally, probably by the summer, they decided it was sarcoidosis. And they just had to take a lot of blood work. They just had to keep just working and working to find out what it is. And so for the sarcoid, it can attack any area in your body. And it happened, of course, in my eyes, my nose, my lungs, and my joints. And it's just like, it can be very painful. It can go in and out of remission, but for the most of the part, you know, you have to take steroids, and you know, I still take a lot of medication because it never like really goes away. Mine never like really goes away, but it's just inflammation. That's the best way to put it. Inflammation in the joints, and it can be in your heart, it can be in your brain. It's just something that they can't put their finger on it. Typically, we know that it happens a lot in African Americans, especially African American women and women of European descent, which is just interesting that it's pretty much targeted to those groups. But now a lot of celebrities have come out and say that they have it. Bernie Mac, of course, you know, he passed away, and so it's people and doctors now are starting to learn a lot about it. So that was that was the summer.
Okay. All right. So did you actually have a stroke after all of that?
Yes, so after a couple of months, because I worked a lot and I traveled a lot, and you know, you get a lot of stress, and so I got to a point where I had to stop working because I was in so much pain all the time. And I said, well, maybe I'll do like a lesser job, something that's not as stressful, and that'll make it better. Well, I kept getting sicker and sicker. I just got worse. And so I completely stopped working, had lots and lots of tests. I was getting tested all the time. And so it got to a point where one day, it was like a Sunday, and I'm not a morning person, but my head was hurting so bad that I got up and went to the emergency room. And they did a lot of tests. They said, oh, you have a migraine, and they sent me home. And now they tell you at the age of whatever, under 40, if someone they have a migraine, you need to check it out. So they sent me home, and they gave me some drugs that I had to take every 4 hours. So I'm taking this medicine every 4 hours, and my head is still pounding. I mean, it's like a pain you've never, ever imagined. It was just that serious, that severe. And my mom and my aunt and my grandmother, we talked every night, especially since I'd stopped working, then I could sit on the call for 2 hours.
You have a wonderful mom.
Right. And so this one night, it was my turn to call in my grandmother to dial her line, and I couldn't dial her number. And I couldn't figure out why. And so I was telling my mom and my aunt, I said, I don't know. Now, my grandmother at the time was like 90 plus years. And so I've known that number my entire life. And I said, I can't really remember the number. And so they dialed it in, and we were talking, and I just said, you know what, I'm not processing any information. Whatever we're talking about, I'm just not processing it. And so, you know, we went on with our call, and probably because I'm a night owl, about 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, I decided to watch Denzel Washington's Man on Fire. So this goes on to about 4 o'clock in the morning. I get an email from one of my girlfriends, and I go to type the email, and I can't read, I can't write. But I thought, okay, well, I am tired. So
You've been up from 4 o'clock in the morning watching Denzel, right?
I said, well, I'm tired. So I sent her something, of course.
It didn't make sense.
It didn't make sense. But I said, well, I'll just go to sleep, and I'll just rest. And then 18 hours later, there were men barging into my apartment, slapping me in the face, you know, saying, are you okay? Are you okay? And I'm like, what is going on? It was weird. And so my family, you know, my mom was calling, my aunt had come, my uncles or friends, everyone was just reaching out to me. And of course, everyone's crying. And I'm like, well, why are they all crying? And I'm like, why are these men in my house? And one of my girlfriends, I heard her knocking on the door, and I'm like, why is she knocking on the door? Does she know what time it is? But I didn't realize that the whole day had gone. And because I'm not a morning person, everyone calls me after 12.
I ask people to do that because
call me after 12.
Yeah, I do.
And
because you have doctor's appointments you have to go to, and you're just so worn down, you know. And so I understand. And so then your nights and your days get mixed up, kind of, sort of, you know. Yeah. So no one really knew from 12 o'clock till, you know. They banged down your door.
Yeah, until they were banging down the door, because I had a doctor's appointment every day that week, like every day for blood work, to see what was going on, why I was so sick. And that was it. It was It was the stroke.
Well, I want to say after all of that, and you heard everything that she said that was going on with her, you saw, she said she had these lesions, she had this, and she had that, and she couldn't do this, she couldn't do that. She is a living miracle, because look how beautiful she is. Please take a picture of her. Look how beautiful she is. She's really a beautiful young woman.
Thank you.
And I would have never thought that she was 30 anything, okay, as long as I've known her. And you would never know that you ever had any of these things that because I didn't know you personally. When I met you, you were always, you and your mom, I thought y'all were sisters. You know, your mother being your sister, not being your mom, you know. And so you look young, so you know that what that says about your mother. Now I understand why, because you said your genes, your grandmother lived to 90-something years old.
103.
103, so y'all got good genes. That's why you can't tell, right? But look at you. You are a miracle. I mean, and don't take that for granted. You are a living miracle, because some people aren't able to come back, you know, to the degree that you have. I mean, like you said, Bernie Mac struggled through that for a long time, even after he found out what was going on with him, and he didn't want anybody to know because it wasn't talked about.
A lot of people don't know about it.
That's right.
Still don't know.
That's right. And when I was working at Sanford Brown Institute, we did medical technicians and medical billing and coding, and we did ultrasound. And so we would take the students out to different places to draw blood and do blood pressure checks, and then we would get invited out to different seminars that people had, so they could use them as their credits. And we actually went to a sarcoidosis seminar that was held up at the hotel right here in Bowie, next to the car dealership. And that was the first time I'd ever heard about it. And like you said, that they said it's a silent killer amongst blacks, because or minorities, because they don't know, and they waste all this time looking at other things, and they don't redirect their attention to sarcoidosis. It's a lady that actually has a program that comes on here that's called Let's Talk Sarcoidosis.
I've been on her show.
Yes.
And she's been on my radio show. And I mean, so it's like people are really starting to kind of know about it. But the reason I've done well is because I have my mom as my patient advocate. I have my uncles and aunts and cousins and friends that have helped me. And I have a great team of doctors, because I had to do speech therapy and
so you wouldn't know
cognitive therapy.
Walking, talking, living, breathing miracle.
Occupational therapy. I've had to do a lot of therapies, and that's the power of good health care as well, because to have 5 different therapies that I had to do, you know, physical every day, you know, that's a pretty penny to have to do that. So if I didn't have health care, and I didn't have my family and my friends and my doctors that I've known since like 2000, 2002, everyone, they've made it to where I am today. And that's the only reason I have really been a miracle. I've had people to help me along, because that's a lot of therapy, and my show is part of my cognitive therapy. I still have long-term and short-term memory, and some things still don't process all the time.
You would never know. I mean, I've been with, you know, just since Ed has passed, we spent some time together, you know, at the hospital and at the funeral, and you would just never know that you had, you know, your mother would know. You know, but no one else would know, you know. And so it's just amazing we don't tell people enough about things that go on in our lives that are life-changing, that they can actually see for themselves, because people that don't believe, they have to have something to see, tangible, so they can say, oh yeah, okay, maybe so, you know, because this is a secular show. I'm not saying what I really want to say, but I mean, anybody out there, you know what I'm talking about, okay? Because we're actually looking at this young lady, and we're seeing that she's beautiful, she speaks very eloquently. You know, your thought processes, whatever you had going on with you can't tell today. So, you know, she can walk and talk and chew bubble gum at the same time. So, I mean, nobody would ever known that you had gone through such, you know, a horrible time in your life, and it's through you having determination as well, because some people would just give up, you know, and the determination that you have is what most of us, when we tackle things that are difficult for us, that we should have the mindset to say, I'm not going to let this thing beat me. And that's what I see that you did, that you were not going to let that thing beat you. Yeah. And your family wasn't either.
Exactly.
So you know, it's important that we do have, guys, good relationships with our family, because you never know when you have to, you know, depend on your family to help you see. And this world is in so much turmoil right now that, you know, it's trying to tear families apart. And, you know, when you need them, then you have nowhere else to go. So, you know, you need to treat your family and friends well, because you can see, you know, it pays off in the long run. So your radio show, tell us about how people, you know, in the credits they'll see how to contact you, but what inspired you to, let's put it that way, what was your inspiration to call this Stroke Diva?
And this is the power of friendship. My major was radio, television, and film. And of course, after I graduated, I didn't do anything with it. I did something else. But in college, I did volunteer. I was an intern at WPFW.
Okay, I know that. I was on there. I was on there one time.
Really?
I was promoting the March on Washington at the time. One of the marches, the 13th man. Was it 13th? It might have been the 35th, because I know it's not 13th, because I'm not that old. I mean, I'm not that, whatever. I think it was the 35th.
Yeah, so I did the public awareness calendar.
Okay.
And so, you know, radio was something that I always loved. And so I went in a different direction, and then of course I had to go and have this stroke. And she had a radio show called Present Living. And so she asked me to be a correspondent for her Present Living. And then she had another show, and she asked me to be a correspondent for that. And she said, KT, a lot of my friends call me KT, she said, okay, so this has helped you a little bit, but she said, you really need to kind of do more, you know, get yourself out there more with other people. So she said, I'll set up this radio show for you. And she said, I'm going to call it the Stroke Diva. Fabulous. Okay. She's like, you had a stroke. She said, but you're still fabulous.
That you sure are. And when nobody ever know you had a stroke, so she named it right.
Right. And so for about a year, she helped groom me. And after that, it was on my own. And the show has been, it's been really good for me because I can connect with people, but I connect with them online. And I pretty much interview entrepreneurs. I mean, I've had maybe someone talk about meditation, and people talk about healthcare. I've had a lot of authors, but a lot of startups and a lot of people doing good things in the community. And so people reach out to me, and I reach out to them, because it's part of giving back. And
that's what Mr. Brown always said, give back, right? Give back, yes.
And that's how he and I met. He heard my story, and he interviewed me. And after the interview, I said, you know what, or maybe even before, I said, you know, this was my major, and I'd love to help you out from time to time. You know, I told him my challenges, you know, cognitive and, you know, my eyesight. And he said, okay, I'll see you next Wednesday. And then every Wednesday after that.
That was it.
For the 4.5 years, and that was his thing. He said, I'm giving back. And you know how selfless he was. He was such a genuine person. And so he took me and my mom in.
Yeah, you become a family, you know, and but he does that with everybody, because you know, he was an advocate for me, and I was an advocate for him, and I truly miss him.
Yes.
And he was really a good person, and you could tell that by the things that people said about him at his funeral. They had nothing but good things to say about him. But you know, both of us had the same kind of spirit. Like we were advocates, okay? So you know, if we thought that we investigate, we just didn't just come off the top of our heads and say this is that or that is that. We would know factually that something was right, and so we were adamant about. We had a passion about the way we might have expressed it. It might have seemed getting on your nerves to somebody else, but it really wasn't. It was like, we were always about the status being right of what's going on with anything that's involved in the city, you know, a group you're with or whatever. He was about doing right, and that's one thing I admired about him, is that he was about doing right, and he stood for right. And if he didn't know who to contact, he would find out who to contact. He
would find out.
That's right. He would find out who to contact and who that person was that he needed to speak with. And he stood up for me, and I stood up for him, you know, and we just took it like, okay, well, you know, God got us. Now, we had 2 minutes and 45 seconds. I told you this clock goes really fast. Well, if you were sitting where I'm sitting at, you would see how fast this clock is running. They have a clock, guys, at, and Tom said that I was looking at the TV, but I'm not today. I'm looking at my gas. But this clock is something else. You got to pay attention to it. And I just want you to know if you get back in the studio, because when it gets to 0, you it. Okay, that's done. Okay. And so we had about 2 minutes. So, so where's your radio station? You streaming live? Is that what you're doing?
Well, it's online, and it's live and recorded. Okay. So I'm not good with like streaming yet, but it is live and recorded, but it's by phone. Okay. So it's easy for me, you know, to get to people and for them to get to me. So by phone, live and recorded. Okay. And then I just blast it all over social media, like I did with Mr. Brown's show, because a lot of my guests were here. I had them here on his show. Right. And so
I'm going to have you come back, because that's what we need to talk about, your show, you know, and because we're down to like 1 minute and 40 seconds. And I just want to tell you.
I have to thank you before we end.
That's what I'm getting ready to say. I want to thank you for coming on and taking the time, because I know we are all still hurting behind Ed's passing. And I just want to thank you guys for, you know, coming and being so open with me as well, you know. And I thank you so much for, at the last minute, to ask you, because it was put in my spirit to ask you to come on and tell your story, you know.
And I thank God for that.
And I was glad. And so you're going to be on the radio show with me too as well. Yes. And so it gets an opportunity. People can hear what's going on. And so with that, I want to say thank you from Let's Talk with Paula. And last week, Tom told me that I waved at this camera, so I'm going to make sure that we tell them who you are one more time.
Kamaria T. Richmond.
Okay, and they call you the who?
The Stroke Diva Fabulous.
And we're going to look at this camera right here.
Oh, okay.
Straight right there.
The Stroke Diva Fabulous. And I'm going to wave.
Okay, we're going to tell you good night.
Good night.
And y'all be blessed, okay?
Be blessed.
Yeah, so we had like 38 seconds, but at least.
There are 16 million children struggling with hunger in America. That's 1 in 5 daughters, sons, neighbors, and classmates who don't know where their next meal is coming from. Yet billions of pounds of good food go to waste every year. It's time we do something about it. Feeding America is a nationwide network of food banks that helps provide meals to millions of kids and families in need. Visit feedingamerica.org to help them feed even more. Together, we can solve hunger. Together, we're feeding America.